Esports is a global billion-dollar industry comprising of different roles, including the one most people see, competitive players. Now more than ever, esports is not only popular, but also sought out as a potential career for people who want their chance to work in a creative industry. With the creation of initiatives such as Riot Games, Game Changers, to more nonprofits and programming popping up every day, inclusivity is here to stay. But what does it take to support women, femmes, and non-binary people's careers and build community? And where will esports take us next? Today, we have three incredible guests who will answer these questions and more to help us get an insider knowledge and understand what we should look out for when entertaining an esports career. I'm Mosley, and this is Open World Dialogue, sponsored by Maximum Games. Before we dive into introductions, I'd like to shout out ESI London. This conference runs from September 5th through the 7th, and WIGI will be there to promote our Get in the Game program that's focused on impactful networking opportunities with industry professionals. Now on to our speakers. First up, we have Paige Cameron. Paige is a founding member as well as VP of Brand at Beast Coast Gaming. Born and raised on the wholesome goodness of 90s PC games, they found their way into esports industry while college, working with other artists in Valve Steam Workshop. After their work was accepted and featured in Dota 2, they were able to attend their first live esports event, the International 4, where they truly fell in love with the esports community and made lifelong friends. One of those friends was Grant Zinn, the founder and CEO of Beast Coast. It wasn't until 2017 Grant approached Paige and asked her to help build an esports brand that would stand apart from other organizations. Paige is proud to be a non-binary leader in esports and is proud to support all marginalized genders in the industry. Next up is Chelsea. Chelsea is the Director of Digital Content at Activision Blizzard Esports, leading platform, content, and influencer strategies across the Overwatch League, Call of Duty League, World Series of Warzone, and more. Prior to Activision Blizzard Esports, Chelsea led social media and audience development at Warner Brothers Digital Networks, working at Machinima, where her expertise in content, social media, and data-driven strategies catapulted Machinima's social media viewership to over 140 million views per month. Chelsea cultivated her expertise in content working in linear television networks like G4, Fuel TV, and the NFL Network. And finally, and last but not least, we have Aziza Brown. Aziza is the owner of an esports team called Dynamic Focus and is one of the investors in the Queen of the Hill series. One last thing I want to just throw out there. Unfortunately, as you can see, we don't have Taylor from Evil Geniuses here. Unfortunately, Taylor is under the weather. We wish her a speedy recovery. And now we can get on to the questions. So, one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that I got my first start in writing about games with esports. I never realized esports existed, though I was somebody who actually grew up in a home full of brothers who played a bunch of fighting games, and I guess that was really my taste of esports, right? But for newbies, there are so many things they don't know about esports. So let's just start with this question as the foundation. How would you describe the esports industry to a newbie? And are there components that make up the foundation of what this industry is? And anyone can jump in, by the way.
Whenever I'm trying to explain it to people, I always try to start with the basis of traditional sports, because traditional sports is so pervasive. And it's a comparison that I kind of resent a little bit, because I know we've had some, we've always been working alongside or even sometimes against traditional sports, and there are a lot of things that are not the same. But it's a place that really, I think, a lot of people can understand, and how traditional sports is essentially people running around tossing a ball, a silly sports ball. At its core, if you explain it to an alien, they would be like, well, what's the point? And I think sometimes when you try to explain esports to people, they're just like playing video games professionally, like, what's the point? But like, it's all silly, and it's all about, when it comes down to it, it's about competition, it's about community, it's about, you know, collective joy and fun and camaraderie and things like that. So I try to start, at least for me, in a basis of traditional sports and try to build from there.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in here as well. I couldn't agree more with Paige's take. I think that esports is a fledgling, let me rephrase. I think that esports is a long-standing competitive segment that is fledgling in the more mainstream pop culture circuit, in the sense that when I first started working in video games and esports, there was still the South Park stigma of the World of Warcraft, you know, nerd in his mom or dad's basement with Mountain Dew, Code Red, and a bag of Doritos. And we have come so far from that. We have what we could characterize as like mainstream traditional sports athletes investing in esports teams and taking ownership of them. We have streamers that are eclipsing popularity, viewership, and engagement of some more traditional and mainstream sports segments. So I would say that this is a competitive arena that is really permeating the zeitgeist in a big way now that things have really exploded in the digital environment. It is sort of like a competition based in our modern interest in technology and gaming around that, as well as, you know, a marriage of that interest with our very like primal, innate love of competition that we've seen since like prehistory. So it's a really exciting place to be. And I think, you know, for somebody who isn't a traditional gamer or someone who hasn't consumed esports before, the best way to really get in on the action is to attend an event, because that moment, that feeling, just that energy that electrifies an arena or a room, wherever the event is being held, is something that just can't be replicated even through a screen.
Yeah, basically everything that everyone said, I try to break it down to sports and how, like, because everyone says esports, what you know, what's like electronic sports, or what it basically is competitive gaming, and everybody understands competition and gaming. That can be broken down in everything that we do, especially for like poker and like not just sports itself, but just the competition of being in play and also in an arena being viewed by an audience. Like, that's basically the gist of what esports is, and trying to bring people back into understanding just the sports aspect of esports, and also breaking down gaming itself, because all esports are not the same, because not all games are not the same. Like, trying to tell people that let's not put it underneath a blanket, because we don't have basketball players going into baseball. You know, it's separate genres.
I think poker is a really, really good example there, because I think when I'm talking about sports, people think about teams, and obviously we have teams in esports. We have Call of Duty, Dota 2, but like when we talk about the FGC and how everybody's kind of an individual player, it's almost akin to that poker thing. It even happens. Evo happens in Vegas for like for a reason. Like,
yes.
But it's very similar. Like, people will watch competitive poker online, even though it's just like one guy. It's not like a sports team, and it still feels, you know, all those same things are true, like you said.
Awesome. So now that we have an understanding of what esports is, especially if you're a new person who wants to venture into it, now let's take a walk over to a much more complicated issue of representation. So we tend to hear that gaming is for everyone, but there are still some issues of representation. So, for example, and maybe I'm not reading the right places, to be clear, the internet is vast, but I come across a lot of people who are perceived as men, who are big streamers, big gamers, and even on these teams, they get all of the recognition. And I don't see enough examples of women, femmes, and non-binary people in esports. Excuse me. So, to you all, why do you think it's important to get more women, femmes, and non-binary people into esports? And then, if they are already in esports, how do we help get that representation at the same level as men?
I actually have a really unique perspective, or maybe it's not unique, but I have a very deep interest in this. This is something that, at Activision Blizzard, we've been holding a lot of focus groups, I guess you could call them focus groups, more intimate discussions with some of our female influencer partners to get a better understanding of the landscape of specifically Warzone and Call of Duty, and why there tend to be, in the Call of Duty League, we are 100% male. Why is that? Why is it that in multiplayer there, women have a harder time raising through the ranks in terms of, reaching that level of competitiveness, or just, getting signed to a team or receiving the necessary visibility to gain the popularity on the Warzone side of things to, have the same level of representation between men, women, and non-binary in terms of influencer partners or otherwise. So I think that as far as to the first part of this question, as far as why we should be interested in making esports writ large more inclusive, last I checked, which was when I was at Machinima, so this may be a dated statistic, but I would venture to say that it's even higher now. There's, roughly 350 million people within the United States that identify as gamers. That can be your mom on their mobile phone, in, who knows where, Wyoming. It could be, your brother on, playing a fighting game in somewhere else, New York, what have you. But that is a huge segment of people. And if you think about the representative makeup of gender within that, or non-binary within that, from a business perspective, you are entirely missing out on a really meaningful segment of people if you alienate or disenfranchise or simply don't reach out or provide an inclusive environment for those individuals. From a competitive perspective, if you think about the way with which people level up to reach, the very high caliber of gameplay that it necessitates to become a pro or an esports pro, then you're missing out on an entire segment of folk that could be talent that could hit your roster, or that could be your next rising star. So just from, a business sense and a competitive sense, it's really short-sighted to not create a more inclusive environment for, diversity and, equity within the esports community from both a talent perspective and business, like I said. And I'm sorry, Robin, can you repeat the second part of your question once more?
Yeah, and if there is a lot of representation, how do we get them on the same level as what we see on the internet with men?
So this dovetails into what I mentioned off the top of my answer, which is some of the, intimate discussions that we've had with female and non-binary creators, specifically in the Call of Duty space, to get a better understanding of why we just see habitually more men in competitive play and more men hitting the mega and, celebrity level influencers within the space. And as it turns out, and this is not surprising to me, this is something that I've heard throughout my career in gaming and esports. It's certainly not unique to Call of Duty. I remember I was at G4 as a producer on Attack of the Show when Gamergate hit. Unfortunately, within this segment, for whatever reason, there is a long-standing acceptance of, we won't play with her because she's a girl. We won't play with them because they're non-binary. It's a very strange and almost archaic sense of acceptance or lack thereof of gender, and so what we've found in these discussions is that, that discrimination, I guess, for lack of a better term, happens at more of the amateur level. Mm-hmm. And the toxicity can be so much that women and non-binary individuals who are looking to break into the space simply don't want to deal with it, because this is something that's supposed to be fun as like a side hustle for many of them on top of their day job. And so they simply are like, why would I want to deal with the trolling and the toxicity that I have to deal with day in and day out when I'm trying to do this, as a side hustle that's fun and engaging for me, because it becomes unfun and not engaging for me when I am constantly receiving this response from my peers. We found at the higher levels of gameplay, there's a lot more willingness to participate with females and non-binary, and a lot more willingness to, as one of my old bosses say, nobody climbs the ladder without somebody reaching down from the top and giving them a hand. When we engage, males at a higher level of gameplay, at a higher level of influencer popularity and success, they're much more willing to be sort of ambassadors and provide advocacy for more diverse individuals. So it's strange. It almost goes back to that, again, going back to that primal sort of way that we view competition, and we inherently have loved competition. It almost goes back to that really archaic mentality of, boys will be boys.
Mhm.
You know, you throw like a girl, that sort of like really damaging gender stereotyping that we have long endured. It permeates esports as well. So all this to say, what we found as in the interim, a way to help level up some individuals is by creating sort of like allyship and ambassadorship with some of the bigger names, so that we can sort of create some sort of groundswell and have inclusivity be normalized, because right now it's the exception.
Yeah, I definitely think you hit on something really, really important there. Like, I think you really hit the nail on the head about just like when you start in the amateur scene, like nobody is policing the amateur scene, and like nobody should, in a certain sense, where it's like these grassroots communities, these like little like these self-selected groups of people, but like they can be filled with people who are toxic and just don't know any better or are actively harmful, and like if you get pushed out at that level, there's no chance to level up, right? And so it's just, it's really challenging. I was on a panel once with the Dota Valkyries. They're a women's a Dota 2 group, and the leader there, Ruby, she talked about like every esport is like a tree, and the tree is planted when the game is made. And so like the community around that game when the tree is planted is like, it's visible in the rings of the tree. So it doesn't matter how big or tall the tree grows. Like there's always going to be this like level of the pop culture zeitgeist that exists within the tree that you have to kind of fight for as you grow through into something more inclusive and better. And so that's how, like, I don't know, when I'm talking about, I love this idea of like engaging allyship and like reaching out to the big names and making sure that they speak up, because I think that voice is really important. And then for me, when young people or even just older people come to me and they're like, how do I break into esports? I talk about building your own positive community and like reaching around to the people around you, because in the absence of those big names reaching down from the ladder, which I think, we're all working to get those people, from higher on the ladder to reach down. But, in the interim, like look around and, take the hand of the people around you and lift each other up, because like those are the people, as you grow, they're going to keep being there, and those are the people that you can select to make sure that they're supportive. And then when they succeed, you succeed, and when you succeed, they succeed, and then suddenly the entire industry, if you and 5 friends are all working to grow, then suddenly the industry is 5% more inclusive if you and all your friends are minorities or gender minorities or what have you. So definitely my go-to advice is just like look around at people who are doing the things that you want to do and help them out, and they'll help you out, because we're all in this together kind of energy. So
one of the things that I've done is, because I literally being part of the FGC, I will see every single month, and ever since we created the Queen of the Hill series, we haven't been seeing this anymore. We created the Queen of the Hill series to highlight the women gamers in each and every single like fighting game that we can actually. We started off with MK, then we did with Street Fighter, Soul Calibur, and Guilty Gear and stuff like that. So when we started highlighting actual players and more women in the series, we're actually amplifying and showing women that there are other women and non-binary people who definitely want to actually play, and by doing that, these people can scrim or do sessions with each other. So they're growing to actually become pro, just like it's being a beacon to actually show that we're actually trying to do this. There's many other groups too that literally like looking at female or women or non-binary tournament organizers too, because they literally tried their best to kind of signify, hey, we're here. And yeah, come to the tournament, and then later on find your friends and find people that you can actually scrim with, because the biggest problem, well, for FGC it's not a big problem. That's why the gates of entry is not as bad. But for other esports where you have to go through the ranking system to actually be seen by other people, you can't go through the ranking system through the toxicity and through everything like that, because of the fact that like as soon as you're a woman or a non-binary person literally has to fight for acceptance at the same time with their gameplay, which is tough enough to try to do, and then trying to find other people to actually talk tech and move throughout the system to actually become those higher ranks is completely difficult. So like another thing about that I would suggest for like League or Dota or anything like that is like having the A League and a B League, because then you'll have more people like not going through the ranking system, but other people that are actually like leveling up to that point too. It's literally making that bridge out of the amateur. It is the biggest problem when it comes to acceptance of different cultures or races or anything, you know?
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head too, that one of the things we unearthed is women and non-binary simply won't get picked on a team, even if they have a higher rank, even if they are a better, stronger player. It's almost a boys' club that still needs to have, you know, the mold broken. And I'll say this is a multidimensional problem with a multidimensional solution. And what we're putting in place and trying is certainly imperfect. It's certainly uncomfortable. And maybe it's a bit ham-fisted at times. But, you know, we have on the Activision Blizzard side of things, we're specifically the Call of Duty competitive side of things, we're experimenting with quotas where, you know, you need to have a minimum number of individuals on your team that represent, you know, diversity or gender equity to participate, because otherwise the change isn't necessarily taking effect at the grassroots and organic level of team selection, where, you know, what we tend to see then is the same females get picked by the same females and the same males continue to pick the same males, and everyone else remains left out or without an opportunity to even have a chance to shine, as Aziza was alluding to, because it's an uphill battle on two fronts, not just your ability to illustrate your prowess as a competitor, but your ability to gain acceptance. I think that was a really eloquent way to say it. And Paige, I think that you hit the nail on the head with the analogy you shared from one of your colleagues regarding a tree and the rings around a tree. I also manage and oversee content and platforms for the Overwatch League. And while that's not a perfect league, it could not be more different than managing the community and the content surrounding the Call of Duty League. You know, there's obviously a lot of work to do on both fronts, but I think that, you know, the Call of Duty League is the way it is because of the way that Call of Duty, the community, was cultivated from a game perspective, you know, going back to its very early days. And Overwatch is a younger game, and we knew better, and, you know, both created the game in a fashion that was a bit more diverse from the get and cultivated a community with, you know, these sorts of initiatives in mind, much more so than, you know, they were in the very early days of Call of Duty, which is, I think, what we're fixing now.
Excuse me. So we're coming up to my favorite question. And since we're speaking about representation, I think it's super important to also talk about representation of jobs. So there are many roles in esports beyond becoming a competitive player. Why do you think people tend to gravitate towards this role? And then more importantly, why is it important for people who want to enter esports to think broadly about the roles that exist?
I kind of wanted to touch on this, but I knew this question was coming in the last question. But if I could return to my tree analogy, I think when people think about esports as an industry, they think of the pro gamers first. And I think a lot of early esports industry was driven by these pro gamers who were like aging out and realizing that they couldn't play, you know, they couldn't play Smash forever. Their hands were going to go numb. You know, they had to start doing something else, but they were born and bred in this scene and they loved it. You know, they had all their connections, their community here. And so I think a lot of the early esports leagues, I wish the woman from Evil Geniuses was here, because Evil Geniuses is one of those ones that like started, you know, back in the day. And like a lot of those original people were just gamers who wanted to keep playing games. You know, they built this industry because they wanted to be here. And so I think that kind of still continues, that idea still continues, because that's kind of where we came from, even though we're seeing now more people who were never, you know, professional gamers grow into this industry. And it's important to have those more people, because those different perspectives can start to shape the way that we approach diversity and inclusion in the esports space. One of the things that I've been really proud of with Beast Coast is that last year we were at TI, and according to a third-party statistic company, they said that we have the biggest portion of female fans out of all the Dota 2 teams that were competing in TI. And Dota is one of those legacy games like Call of Duty. It sprung up, you know, in the early 2000s. So it's got this kind of, you know, it's got this ring of like specifically gamer boy MLG energy that's kind of hard to break through, even though there's nothing like, you know, there's something inherently masculine about Dota. There's characters of all genders in the game, but just knowing that like by providing a space and like an aesthetic and like talking loudly about how we support, you know, marginalized gamers, we've kind of created this space where like we have female fans, and the most female fans out of anybody in the Dota 2 space, which is wild. And so I like to attribute some of that to me, because I've been part of Beast Coast for like since the beginning. But also we hire marginalized identities, we hire women, and all of those people working behind the scenes helps Beast Coast create a brand voice and hire, gamers who all like support that brand voice. And it makes it a hopefully, this is my goal, right? It makes it a more inclusive brand, which hopefully makes the whole scene healthier. And so making sure that people know that they can get into esports and just helps us get more perspectives, and it helps us grow. So that's just really important to me.
Hear, hear.
What was the question?
It's totally fine. It's totally fine. So why do you think people gravitate towards esports player positions, and why do you think it's important for people to think broadly about esports as a career?
Okay, so the reason why is that's the only thing highlighted on Twitch or YouTube. That's the reason why. Like, you're not going to get the tournament organizer, the producer, the sound checker. You're not going to get the lawyer. You're not going to get attorney. You're not going to get the accountant. You're not going to get the physical therapist. You're not going to get the occupational therapist. You're not going to get all those people being shown on screen. They're not there. So the only interpretation that all investors and audience members have are the players and the coach and the casters. So to change that, you most likely have to do it at the education level, but I work in the education level too, and I try my best to open up those doors to make sure that more people know about it, because we're not highlighting it. Like, I went to Evo where you didn't see the team manager jump up on the stage. Like, there's nobody there, like, to show the broader perspective of esports, except for the time when Evo actually showed the credits of all the people working in the background. That was the first time I've ever seen in a fighting game tournament that all those people were highlighted. Like the game leads and all the staff were highlighted.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that the reason why most folk gravitate toward the, pro level player career is because it's what's most visible. Mm-hmm. But I do also think that there's something else more insidious, which is going back to the first question off the top of this panel, where esports is at as a well-respected and accepted within the mainstream pop culture zeitgeist, where it's at as an industry and as a sport. I come from the NFL prior to moving into video games and esports, and plenty of criticism that has all of its problems, sure. But as roughly 100-year league, it has solidified itself as something that people take seriously as a league where there's more opportunity. People know that there's more opportunity just than being Tom Brady. I think that within esports, there's still a lack of understanding that this is something you can make a career out of. There is a foundation behind this. There is investment behind this. There's an entire industry, multi-billion-dollar industry behind this. And there's almost this lack of respect or lack of awareness that esports is here and it's here to stay. And there's plenty of opportunity within that. If you want to make a career in video games and esports, you don't have to be, some grade A player. You can just come in and hone your craft, whether it be social media, whether it be, as Aziza said, being a lawyer, whether it be, marketing or business development or partnerships and sales or league management and administration. There's so many different things, game capture artists, post-production. There's so much that goes into esports to make it what it has become today and continue to propel the industry forward. And I think, we just haven't reached that level of maturity and respect within that mainstream pop culture for people to just synonymously think, oh, esports means I could be all of these things, rather than just, oh, esports means I'm a streamer that levels up into getting a deal as a pro.
Thank you. I think for me, and the reason why this was my favorite question of what I created is that I think that was a lot of my criticisms when I was writing about esports is get the players. I'm like, and no offense to them, but I don't care about the players. Like, I want to know about the people behind the scenes, because if I'm somebody behind the scenes writing about it, I know there are other people who are getting into these positions that are making good money and happy, and they're not breaking their hands doing combos, or they don't have to do all of that stuff. So that stuff is super important to me. So we're gonna roll right into this next question, which is very related. And I just wanna know, this was mostly gonna be about Taylor because, you know, she's the HR person, but you all have experience, I'm sure, hiring or being a part of hiring for people in esports. So what can women, femmes, and non-binary people do to stand out and master their craft before jumping into the industry?
Network. Talk to people. Advocate for yourself and be specific about what you want. And if you don't know what you want yet, be specific that you don't know what you want, but you're interested in finding out more, learning and developing in XYZ areas. You know, people want to help you. I think it was either Aziza or Paige that said earlier that people want to help. And that's so true. Yeah. Now more than ever, you know, especially if you're a young female or non-binary individual in this industry, because we need more of you. So, you know, my best advice is if you want to break in before you hop on stream and fire up your game engine, you don't even need to do all that. The worst kept secret is I'm not a gamer, but I've had a long and very successful career in gaming and esports because my craft is great. Talk to people and find out what it is that you like. Ask them how they can help you. And, you know, again, if you know what you want, then be specific with how they can help you.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. My advice for this, and you can do this alongside networking, and I really recommend you should do it alongside networking, is pick a project. Like, think of something that you want to do, pick a project and start and finish it. Because that whole journey that you're taking when you're talking to people, you can start to ask them questions about your project. So I have a friend, he started an entire spreadsheet where he was tracking all the different Valorant players who were free agents at the very dawn of like Valorant's competitive scene, to try to help them get signed, to try to help people create teams. And he built this huge spreadsheet, and that was the kind of stuff that like got him connections. It got him, you know, some cash. He was selling it to orgs who were looking to enter Valorant. And it's a very start and finish project. You know, he eventually ended up selling it to somebody and moving on with something else. And but like that's the kind of project you can start to network around. You can be like, oh, I'm building this, like I would love to talk to you about your involvement in this. And then like once it's built, you know, you have all these connections and you can start moving forward. And then you can be like, oh, well, I built this thing. It's a great story to tell and it looks great on a resume. So like just pick a project that you're passionate about, or if you can't think of anything, look around at your peers. Like I said, those other people who are potentially looking for help, and be like, yo, what can I do for this? Like, can I make art? I'm an artist. Or like, can I put this all in an organizational spreadsheet and like project manage this for you? Because like I know a lot of artists, creative people who want to start projects, but they don't have like the project management skills. And so if you're just an organized person, you can be like, yeah, I'll put this in a spreadsheet. I'll like build out a calendar. I'll like set up a Gantt chart for you. I know tons of artists who will be like, oh, thank goodness, you know? And so by that, you know, then you're putting your name, you're connecting to people, and then you have something to put on your resume that you want to grow. And then, sorry, if I have one third thing that is a little bit less than connected, I would just start applying for gigs, even if you don't think you're 100% qualified for them, because I've absolutely spoken to some people in interviews and been like, I really like this person's vibe. I like their passion. Like maybe I can find a junior position for them. Or this person is super talented, but not in exactly the way that I want. Like maybe I'll talk to the other people in my team and see if they have any openings, because I think this person could do a really good job here. And I don't want to lose that passion. I don't want to lose that skill set just because it doesn't exactly line up with the job that I'm looking for. That skill set I think would be super valuable. So like definitely like apply to jobs, just consider them networking practice. You know, you get to talk to the person interviewing you, you get to feel them out, feel their vibe, follow them on Twitter. And I've met so many people in interviews that I like think are really, really rad. It makes me sad when I can't hire everybody that I interview, because I've never really found anybody, you know, I've never interviewed anybody I didn't like. And it feels bad having to reject some of them, but I was like, maybe, you know, I'll keep you in touch. I'll keep you in my Rolodex, right? So just like practicing that by applying to jobs that maybe you're not 100% feeling good on, but just like, you know, use that as an opportunity to network and grow.
If I can just double click on this, because I think Paige is getting at something really critical, which is be hungry and communicate that hunger. For me, I manage a team of roughly 30 people and a bunch of agency and vendor partners. I hire folks that are not a finished product. I prefer to hire folks that are not a finished product. I like people that are hungry. I like people that know they have things to learn and want to come in and learn it. So yeah, absolutely. To amplify what Paige is saying in terms of apply, you know, just illustrate your work ethic when you do have these conversations. That is so critical, so critical. We're all learning, and you should never stop yourself from applying for something because you don't feel like you know 100% of the roles and responsibilities of the gig. If you know like 60% of it and the other 40% you're prepared to learn really quick, apply.
That was another thing that I actually really wanted us to specify, because not a lot of women actually apply. A lot of women or non-binary people will just sit on the timeline and just scream out and say, hey, I want to, like, why doesn't anybody pick me up? And I'm like, you're not seen. You haven't written an email, you haven't submitted a resume, you haven't questioned anybody, you haven't walked outside and just looked at the field and what you want to do and asked those people what you want to do. There's the other barrier is communication. Like, we aren't communicating what we want and what we want to do in this field, and that's another thing that it comes down to, education and understanding how to move in a field whatsoever. It's like not a lot of people are prepared to actually do the networking or just submit a cold email to somebody just to see if they can actually reach out and get a position. Same thing with players. Players don't ask to see if there's anybody in their roster that they would like to or do a tryout or anything like that. It's really important for, even in the smaller, like, you know, tier 3, tier 2s that actually work, because some of these businesses are a little bit sketchy, but just having I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Go on, this bait is paid, girl.
Just saying. Yeah, but just to see if anybody would actually elevate you, you know, just apply to companies that actually have their emails in their bios.
Yeah, I mean, you miss I saw this, and this is so silly, but I saw this in my 6th grade math class, and it has stuck with me through my career. You miss 100% of the chances you don't take. It was on like an NBA poster or something with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
But I had a career coach that also provided me with some valuable insight. And this was when, you know, I thought that I was approaching finished product as far as professional, and I just blew my mind and opened my world. So I'll pass it along here. Make a career plan for yourself. And what that should be constituted, you know, what that career plan should constitute within itself is, where do you want to be? And you don't have to be, again, if you can be specific, fantastic. If you can't, that's okay. It can be, where you want to be is understanding where you want to be in the next year. Then put underneath that what steps you need to take to get there. Is it, I need to improve my Photoshop skills. I need to expand my network and get on LinkedIn and become a premium member, because that $30 is worth it a month, and I will stop buying Starbucks instead so that I can afford that. Is it, you know, I need to hone my Excel spreadsheet skills, or is it I need to level up in Overwatch, whatever it may be. And then put in the best thing that can happen. What is the best outcome that could possibly happen from all of this effort? And then put in the worst thing that could happen. What is the worst thing that could happen from all of this effort? And after that, put, what will I do if the worst thing happens? Because a lot of what stops us from trying is fear. And that fear can be a fear of success. And I think that this is more insidious with women, that imposter syndrome, than it is with men. And I would say, you know, non-binary individual, I would assume, may feel similarly, because we're all struggling to be considered equal. So I will say, tackling that fear by actually putting it on paper and working through your thoughts and identifying what that fear itself is, and then seeing that it's not earth-shattering, it's not the end of the world. And if it actually does come true, which I guarantee you it probably won't, you have a plan right after and you will still be okay. So what is the hurt in trying? And for me, that was a huge, gateway to just the rest of my career and understanding the direction that I wanted to take it. So I highly recommend for everybody, to Aziza's point about apply, get out there. Women have a tendency to just sort of passively sit in the job market. Make a plan that's actionable, put timestamps on it, and face your fear. And don't be afraid of success. Identify your success. And if the worst thing happens and you fall flat on your face and your fear comes true, have your exit strategy and what happens next. And then everything seems a lot more attainable. Play the LinkedIn game.
Failure, it's almost a cliche, but like failure is a part of success. Failure is a part of growth and learning. Like you need to, if you start and finish a project, maybe the project doesn't pan out the way you want it, but you still learn something and you grow. And I think, yeah, definitely like putting yourself out there is like a huge hurdle to get over, where you're scared you're going to be too forward, or you're going to do it wrong, or like so and so. But if you can practice putting yourself out there and be okay and like start to get comfortable, like failing even at putting yourself out there, then you're already learning and growing so much more than somebody who's just like, well, I can't wait till someone notices how cool I am. Mm-hmm. You can just practicing networking and reaching out and cold emails, all that stuff are skills. They're not just inherently learned. Like you can start practicing them the same way you would practice Overwatch, And so if that's somewhere you want to be, then just start grinding the MMR ladder of shaking hands and getting business cards.
To the end of failure, just for whatever it's worth for everybody out there. When I broke into the industry, some 10 plus years ago, I think I applied. Well, I had spent about 6 months networking and meeting everybody I possibly could that would give me the time of day and talking to them, whether it was, through LinkedIn or Facebook or just in person or otherwise. And I must have applied to, I think the final tally was about 143 jobs. And of those 143 jobs, 6 of them actually called me. And of those 6, I got one. One of those interviews panned out to an actual, entry-level position. So everybody just like find your dream, find what you want your next step in life to be, even if it's not your dream, because often the burden of finding your dream can be so heavy, it can be paralyzing. So just find your next action point for the next 3 years and see what the entry point is for it, and just go after it with reckless abandon and, a heck of a lot of stamina and willingness to be rejected or simply not accepted.
Yeah, it is true. Everybody says toughen up and blah blah blah, but tough skin is actually learned, not earned, not given to you. You have to literally take your punches and then get up again and just keep it moving. Like, do what you need to do to actually grow yourself. You won't be successful all the time, but there is success somewhere, because the world is bigger than what you think it is.
I love this question. It just brings out the old career coach in me. I'm like, oh, this is all nice and fuzzy, because everything that I always talk to people about, and they're like, oh, I don't believe you. I'm like, well, see, people who are already in this industry doing this is telling you this. So go follow your dreams. Awesome. Okay. So we're going to go right into building community. So let's say that we have women and non-binary people in these jobs and they're happy, but they just don't know what to do in terms of having a decent community of people who care about them. So how do we make these spaces inclusive for them when they're in these positions? And there are many ways, and this is a very broad question and very loaded too. So it can go any way you want it to, but how can we start doing that? Or is there programming that you've seen that has done that? So go for it, however you want to answer it.
It's so interesting, because the thing is that most of these communities they're in Discords, and it's really underground to actually see them. So finding those networks of systems, of places where you can go to actually just belong is I'm not going to say it's the most easiest thing, or you can create it yourself. Like you can be vocal about yourself and who you are in the industry and create a small little community for yourself. It's literally just, if you're extrovert, you're golden, but if you're introvert, you kind of have to break out of that little shell of yourself and say, hi, I'm so and so and I'm part of this industry. Here's my Discord. Where do I go? Or come to me and talk to me about this, and start building your own little network, your own little community. Still to this day, like when it comes to like the Queen of the Hill series or anything like that, we're still finding women and non-binary people and femme identities that literally never seen this before. Because the thing is that the network, because the internet, despite it being so large and so voluminous, it doesn't carry its weight at all. So you just have to kind of push it out there It's a great question.
Is it, and let me sorry, I just want to clarify the question a little bit too. Is it more geared toward, like you're in the workplace, how do you create a more inclusive environment for your peers and colleagues that may identify?
Yes, it can be that, or just in general, like how do you build those spaces? Are there programs that you've seen that already do that? You can answer it however it speaks to you.
Yeah, I guess so. As far as are there programs that already do that, I will say that there are a fantastic number of grassroots programs and some that are not grassroots, some that are quite popular of, women in Warzone, women in gaming, women in esports, and non-binary groups as well as, a plethora of other, I suppose, more demographic focused group. A quick search on Twitter will unearth many of them. You can generally do your diligence, as we all have in the past, of sort of QCing their bio and their comments and their posts and their engagements to see the legitimacy of it, as well as, just checking through them, searching through any events that they may have hosted or whatnot. So there's certainly, I think that people have a tendency to not realize just how much is actually out there in terms of, groups perpetuating and facilitating a new world of inclusivity, which is awesome. Candidly, like from a business perspective with Activision Blizzard, it's like, okay, sure, we could be, just creating our own programs, or we could tap into these creator networks that are already out there, but need a platform to be able to scale and gain recognition. And it makes a lot more sense to do the latter for a multitude of reasons. Going to the other side of what this question could be, which is, you're in a workplace, how do you create a more inclusive environment writ large? I think, and I hate to bring up the pandemic, but I actually think that COVID has done us all a solid in the sense that it has brought humanity back to business. We've all been, sitting in our bedrooms, our dogs or cats are coming on screen, our children are coming on screen, our partners are coming on screen. And that in a sense is refreshing, whereas we used to all show up to work and sort of be these robots that made our way on a schedule into conference rooms, and like nobody knew anything about your life outside of those cinder block walls. So I do think that, sort of taking the torch that COVID has lit and carrying it forth in terms of being accepting of those imperfections of being human and the intersections of those imperfections with the work, and whether that means, putting your pronouns up in your bio or, in your email signature or whatnot, or if it just means being cognizant of the fact that not everybody thinks like you, not everybody interprets things like you, not everybody communicates like you do, and being aware that, microaggressions can amount to a macroaggression. So the culture that you cultivate, you need to really be aware of it. I have sat in women's groups at Activision Blizzard. I have sat in, non-binary, gender equity groups at Activision Blizzard. And that's something that I hear at large as the worst part of it, is just sort of that culture of like, that folks not even being self-aware to realize that they're creating a hostile environment for certain individuals that are, more minority on their team. So I think just, again, cultivating that culture of it's okay for you to be human and all that comes with that, and all of the diversity that's included with that. Here we all are bringing the beautiful diversity of our thoughts, experiences, and expertise to find a truth together, in a workplace environment, as well as just being cognizant of, this may sound like I'm talking on both sides of my mouth, but being cognizant of the fact that like how you talk to your friends may not be appropriate for how you should be talking and addressing your peers in a workplace environment, because you could unknowingly be creating, again, like those microaggressions add up. For me, that is, as a people manager, that has been something that I've just strived to cultivate, and transparency of like, where I'm a human and I need time. I'm a working mom of two, my babies end up coming on stream all the time in my Zoom calls and whatnot. And that's okay. I'm transparent when I have to take time to take my kid to go to the doctor, just like one of my employees, dog passes or whatnot, or somebody's having a health emergency, it's like, just, we all are human, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not good at your job. And there's certain things that we should be prioritizing over work. And I think that this about face of corporate America has, due to COVID, has actually helped us all remember that and hit the reset button, at least in my limited experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Paige, before you answer, I'm going to let you have the last word because we're closing in at the end of the hour. So go ahead.
I'll talk real quick. I had an answer for this, but I was worried it was too esoteric. But I think Chelsea really kind of led into it. Definitely, if you're in a community of like a Discord group or even at work, if you start to take care of yourself and prioritize stating your boundaries, even gently, just being like, this conversation makes me uncomfortable, or that joke, I didn't really vibe with that joke, or this content post, the social media post doesn't really it doesn't really sit well with me. Can we take it again? Starting to prioritize your feelings in a way that and communicating them can start to create a culture that allows that to happen. And it can be really scary at first to be like, I feel like this joke is a little too insensitive. Can we, take it again? It's like a hard thing to start, but starting those conversations, even if they're hard, can make the entire community better. And I think the easiest way to start is just from your own perspective. When something feels off, you can just try to speak up if you can. It makes it easier for everybody around you to speak up if they're feeling the same way. That's all I wanted to say. We can close it out.
This was awesome. You have no idea that there are so many other questions that I wanted to ask you all, but I'm it's an hour and I'm not going to keep you all here. You have lives. And so does our incredible production coordinator here, Ariana, as well. So I'm not going to keep you here forever. That being said, I want to thank all three of you for coming. This was amazing. I love esports. And so talking with you all was super inspiring. I'm maybe I should jump into esports. Who knows? So with that being said, now that you've learned about esports through career and community building, we hope you take what you've learned and get involved in esports in some way, whether that's entering the industry for the first time or building a more inclusive space for everyone. I'm Robin Mosley, signing off, and happy gaming.